Hello and welcome to Tell Us Your Effing Story, a podcast by franchisors for franchisors that goes behind the scenes with some of the most interesting characters in Australian franchising. I'm Bruce McFarlane, the host, and my co-host John Sully. We're speaking with David Lindsay, currently the CEO of hattch, but also the founder of Salts of the Earth, an award-winning franchise.
Righto, Dave. Tell us your fucking story.
John, it's not fucking story, it's franchising story.
Got it.
Come on.
Sorry, Dave.
Somebody didn't read the memo.
All right, spelling mistake.
Yeah, oh jeez. Well, how far do you want me to go back? Where
All
do we
the way.
dive in? All the way in?
All the
Well,
way.
I suppose this is an accent that I didn't pick up from Ballarat, so I'm an immigrant to the shores here of Australia. I grew up in a very small village in Ireland called Knoll. I think I had a total of 500 people there. Not much to it. You played Gaelic football and that was it. You represented the parish. First job was working on a farm feeding cattle at the age of 8, getting paid £5 a week, and that was it. It was no such thing as do your homework. It was get out and do the work. Always, grew up around, my family has been in small business all my life, so learned all business around the dinner table. It was always discussed, and it was always, learned how to manage money, everything like that, manage people, and learned all of that from a very, very young age. I'm the youngest of 4, so I've got 2 older brothers and an eldest sister that are back in Ireland. My oldest brother is moving out to Australia as we speak now to help me with the hattch project, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, he seems much nicer than you.
Yeah. Well, everybody keeps saying that.
So how'd you go at school, mate? What were the highlights for you?
Yeah, school for me, it's quite. I didn't get along with school too well. It was, I think, it was me not getting along with the system of school. But I was more of a figures person, not a language person. So I failed every English exam I ever sat. Went to tutors to learn Irish and just wrote my name on the exam paper and sat there for another 2 hours. But no, I wasn't one for school. But I did have a business teacher in secondary school that told me that I'd never amount to anything, Mr. Briscoe.
That was a nice bit.
Yeah, for a man who sat there and read the newspaper for an hour each day teaching
Nailed
us.
it.
Yeah, he nailed it. So I did. I ended up in college thanks to my mother really pushing me through and said, "Nah, you've got to get something under your belt." So I ended up going to Portobello College in Dublin, and I studied. I got a Bachelor of Arts in Business Studies, and just really focused around the financial side of things, strategy side of things, which is where my strengths were. I wasn't able to do that in school due to being terrible at language, English and Irish. So I never got to really learn accounting and business. So that was schooling for me, unfortunately.
And what about back then? What did you want to do? Like, did you have any plans of going into business, or was it really just to sort of get through school and then get a job and down that path?
Yeah, I was always one for how do I make money? How do I support? How do I better myself? How do I help out at home? How do I, toe the line with everybody else in the family? And we learned that from our parents. It was just, I remember back when my father said, "I'm bringing the kids to school today, Marie," it meant that we weren't going to school. It meant that we were going to work. And there was a note written in the journal for the teacher. So it was, from the get-go, it was just in our blood that how do we get out there and work for ourselves and create a future for ourselves, and it was just bred into us.
What did your parents do?
Funnily enough, my father he had a company called, a number of different companies. One was called RTL, which was all about typing, print, all of that. And then he opened up, because he was selling the equipment, he ended up starting up another company called Mail Marketing, which was, okay, well, I'm selling the equipment, I may as well start doing the services of print marketing back then. And then he got into logistics. I've got an elder brother, so my 2 oldest brothers worked with my dad, and I didn't enter the family business from there. I went out and I actually studied to be a stonemason, of all things, believe it or not. I have a true passion for creativity and structure and build, which I love doing in business, is building. And I went out and I became a stonemason.
So how long were you doing that for?
I think I was 4 years after training. I'd done it, and then the big 2008 crash, when I'd finally built a bloody successful stonemasonry business, it all came crashing down in 2008.
So you started your own business?
Yes, yeah. I went out and, funnily enough, my older brother Scott, who's going to be joining me with Hatch, he actually came along and helped me as well in stonemasonry. So we've worked together quite a few times. I went out and I practiced under one of the best stonemasons in Ireland. And it was drywalling, and built up a reputable business that people working along the side street, having signage up. Linwall Stonemasons was the name of it, and people just loved the work, and it's quite rewarding to go back to Ireland and you drive around the countryside and you see all the houses that you built. So and they're still there, looking great as hell.
So they're all still standing.
They're all still standing, but my warranties ran out.
Very good. And that's when you came out here, is that right?
Yeah, I came out here in 2009, just with the crash that happened back home. Like, literally, I think we had about 18 months work ahead of us in the stonemasonry business, and just overnight, in a matter of weeks, it was just, nah, can't go ahead. We done everything. We looked at our business model to see how can we, just keep the stonemasons going and keep them employed, but the work just dried up to the point where it wasn't feasible to keep on doing the business. You couldn't make it. In order to do the quality of work that we held ourselves accountable to, you couldn't have done it for the prices that we were charging back then. So I ended up folding the business. I went and I actually started driving trucks for my middle brother, Richard, and fair play to him, he helped me out, but I was on the graveyard shift where I was getting up at 12 o'clock at night, driving a truck down to Cork, getting back at 5:30 the next day, back into bed, a couple of hours, and up again in a couple of hours to get going, and that was just to pay the mortgage.
So you're not close with that brother then? If he's giving you that.
Well, we did have a good few biffs in the early days. It was, still close with him. He's a hell of a worker. He's in the logistics business now.
So how many staff? Like, what was the biggest you got your stonemasonry business up to?
We had 4 stonemasons working, and which is because you don't want to be too big, because the quality of work that you want to pump out, you have to keep a very close eye on it. So we ended up having about 4 stonemasons, a mixture of Eastern Europeans and Irish people. So, and it was bloody cold to do it. I don't miss that weather, and I don't miss getting up in the morning and put the layers of clothes on, the 2 pairs of socks, the tracksuit bottoms, and a pair of work pants over that every morning. So, yeah, it's but. Yeah, I was always told if you haven't made your money by the age of 45 as a stonemason, your back will be stuffed, which, as you guys know, I'm struggling with my back now as we speak.
I thought you were only like 24.
Well, it seems that way. I've had a very stressful upbringing, John.
So how did that go? Like, closing a company down, your first business that you've set up, you've had to lay off your staff and tell them, look, we're done now. And how did that all pay out for you?
Yeah, it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to say to people, listen, there's nothing more we can do. I've tried to go out and actually get more work, and it's just not there. The pricing's not there, so I can't afford to pay you. So, it happened relatively quickly, and with the crash in Ireland, it happened really, really quickly. And as much as you try and pivot that sort of speed, you can't. So I think that was the first time in my life that I actually had to try and pivot a business, and I wasn't successful at doing it at all. I couldn't find a feasible business model that was going to, ultimately deliver the outcome, which is keeping people in business and providing a quality product at the end of the day. So what's the point in doing it?
Did you have to, did you have half-finished projects that you had to shut down at the time, or did you get to finish everything?
I got to finish them, yeah. Like most projects, fixed price contract, and you got that in place, and obviously you're working with the banks with mortgages and everything like that, so you knew payment was going to come, and people were understanding of the situation as well, that we were a small business as well, and you have to pay people to pay wages. There was 1 or 2 occasions people didn't pay, and you have to incur those costs, unfortunately. It's a bit of a struggle.
Who made the decision for Australia? How did that all come about?
Well, I was backpacking in 2001 with my eldest brother, and we had a we had a spiffing time over here. Let's just say we travelled the country all around. You know, landed in Melbourne. We rented a camper van and we drove up through Adelaide, Alice Springs, flew down to Perth. We bought a busted Ford Falcon in Perth, and we ended up driving all around Australia, all around the top end, down the east coast. You know, worked in farms, done everything to basically survive. If we had a slice of pizza a day and a box of goon, that was a bloody good day. But it was after I came back from there, I was like, what a bloody good country Australia is. And I've been to many places in the world. I've been around Europe, South Africa, America, Asia, but really fell in love with Australia. I thought it was, people are great. It's not a massive cultural shock for an Irish person, and we all get along once they find out I'm not a pom.
So you both probably had family here, you just hadn't met them before. Is that
Well, this is an outreach. Any children? No, not at all, John. That's not how we behave.
You're a good boy.
We're a good boy. So yeah, I made the decision because times were tough back in Ireland. I had to move out of my house that I bought, which I'm actually selling now at the moment. How many years later? I bought it just over a year before the crash. Bought it at the peak of the Celtic boom with the Celtic Tiger, which it was called back then. And basically I was starting to default on my mortgage because there wasn't as much cash coming in, so ended up having to make a decision. At the time, I wasn't seeing anybody, I didn't have kids, and couldn't really see a whole bright future in Ireland. It was, I think people get to a fork in the road where they go, if I go down this path, it's going to get dark and lonely, or I can actually, grab the bull by the horns here and just take control of my life and master my own destiny. And that's when I made the decision. My eldest brother was living in Paraguay at the time. He was getting married, so I said, I'll head over to South America, and then I'll tell my parents that I'm heading on to Australia from here, and if I'm back, I'm back. If I'm not, we'll see each other. So that was quite a difficult time back then, but the decision had to be made.
And how did you pick Melbourne? Is it because you spent a bit of time here when you were backpacking, or?
It wasn't where I spent most of my time. It was where we first landed. But I had a good friend here called Paddy McGardle, who I grew up with back in Ireland.
So he's French.
Yeah, with a slight Irish background. But no, before I made the decision to move over, I was talking to Paddy on the phone and saying, how's the work situation over in Australia? Like, if I was to come over, do you reckon you get me a bit of work? And he said, listen, I've got a job for you as soon as you land. So if it wasn't for Paddy, he looked after me, got me a job. Yes, I did have to sleep on his couch for 3 months at the start so that I could get the back payments of the mortgage all sorted, and then away with us. Bought my first bed in Australia 3 months after arrival.
So you bought a bed?
I bought a bed, yeah,
right.
As opposed to a couch.
Yeah. And where did you put that bed?
Yeah.
Well, I found a rental.
Very
Yeah. So 2009, I landed 24th of April 2009, came over, and it was pretty much, I had a year left on, because I'd worked in the farms back in 2001 as a backpacker. I managed to dig up my old boss's ABN to prove that I actually worked on a farm and get a second year visa, and that afforded me to get out here, but I knew that I had to do something else to stay here, which is a bigger story anyway. But anyway.
Well then, so at this time you're working on the farms and living to paycheck, I'm guessing. So
yep.
How did the idea of a business come about at this time?
Well, it wasn't, my father, he suffered from he's developed respiratory conditions shortly after he retired at the age of 50, and I've seen firsthand how the health of someone deteriorating and the effects that it can actually have on the family, not just from a mental health point of view of the person suffering from it, but all those involved in the family as well. And it wasn't until I went back, so I arrived over here in the April 2009. I went home for Christmas, and my father had started a new therapy called salt therapy, which involves sitting in a room similar to what we're sitting in here now at the moment. And there's a machine that blows minute particles of salt into the air, and you sit there and you breathe in dry salt air. And basically what it does is it helps cleanse the sinus and it helps clean up the lungs, and you basically cough out everything. And I couldn't believe it the day that I landed, and I came in and I done one of those surprise your parents. My mother nearly had a heart attack when I walked in the door, but I noticed instantly my father's health was dramatically better, and I said, "What the hell? What are you doing? Like you're vastly better." And he said, "Would you believe I'm sitting after all these years of suffering? I'm sitting in a room breathing in dry salt air." And I was like, "Would you shut the fuck up? Like, seriously." Yeah. And he said, "No, I'm doing it." So I said to myself, "Do you know what? I want to go and take a look at this, because this sounds, if it's having this effect on you, do you know, the millions of people that suffer from respiratory and skin conditions in Australia, well, it's not here." So I went up I followed him up and I done a session with him, and the place was busy. And I thought to myself, this is great. Not only is this a very rewarding business where you're helping people with their health and getting their health back on track. You know, it's a business. At least it's a legacy. You can say I'm leaving a legacy by helping people live a healthier life. And I looked into seeing if it was in Australia, and it wasn't. Nobody had actually started a salt room in Australia at the time. So I made a few phone calls to the manufacturers in Eastern Europe and said, "Are you looking at a distributor for Australia?" And that's when I said, "Right, I have a new focus. This is how I'm going to stay in Australia." So now I had to try and figure out how am I going to stay in Australia long enough to get a business up and running.
Yeah. Yeah, right. So that there was research around the world that's saying this was changing everyone's lives. Was it completely new?
It was
everywhere.
Well, there's salt mines in Eastern Europe, and you speak to any Eastern Europeans, they'll talk about the salt mines where they go down into the salt mines and they'll stay there, and there's beds and there's soccer pitches, there's churches, everything in these salt mines, and they've got evidence that it helps with relieving symptoms of respiratory conditions. And if you think about it, you only have to go for a swim in the ocean. You come out and you're blowing all the boogers out of your nose and everything like that. And people, whenever they're struggling with their asthma, they'll have beyond a saline nebulizer. It's just another way of administering salts into the airways to help clear all that mucus. If you clear all that mucus, well, then the symptom of the condition is being looked after. So then you've got then the medication can treat the condition. So it's not an alternative. It's a complementary therapy towards mainstream. Yeah. So
you make the decision. That's what you're going to do.
Yep.
How'd you get the cash to do that?
This was when you talk about hustle. At the time, I'd just met my now wife, Kath. So I met my wife 3 months after arriving. So I'd been with her. I'd been with her probably about 3 months. And I come back from Ireland and I'm all fired. And when I put my mind to something, there's not a wall that can stand in my way. And I said, I've got to do this. This is how I get here. So I couldn't get on a de facto visa or anything with Kath because we hadn't been together long enough. And so I said, okay, well, I need to look into how do I extend my stay in Australia. At the time, the fella who I was working for in civil engineering, he basically told me in February, I'm not going to be sponsoring you into the country after being led along the garden path of, oh, there's sponsorship here for you if you knuckle down. It didn't come through, so I was like, shit, I'm looking down the barrel here a couple of months. I'm going to be back on a plane and heading back home. Looked into what can I do so that I can get a business up and running, and what's going to give me a bit of time to get that happening. Massage therapy course. I went and I became a student. So I was like, well, what's the topic? Let me take a look at the skilled migration list, and let me take a look at Let me take a look at what's closely aligned to health and well-being, and I'll just go and study the bloody thing. And that's going. I can say that I'm going to be practicing massage therapy whilst building this business. So I'd managed to squirrel away a couple of funds, enough to just buy the first, I think it was 2 machines, and then I took a lease out in Essendon, and been background in building, and I met a good bloke called Jed Taylor and his wife Dominic in Peru when I was in South America, and he just got back from another trip from overseas, and I said, mate, let's catch up. I need to build something. He's like, what do you mean you have to build something? I said, I'm going to build a salt room. He's go, what the fuck's a salt room? You know, so we had to figure that out as well ourselves. So we just got stuck into it, you know, late at night, working whatever way, and I had to do a massage therapy course as well. So trying to do, I think it was 40 hours a week study, as well as put in 60 hours a week in labour. There wasn't a whole lot of sleep, let me tell you, but we got through it. We got there.
So you just signed a lease and found a place? And
signed a lease, set up a company, signed a lease, start the construction, put the business in, and opened the doors. And it was quite funny because where we were based in Essendon was very busy. It was very, very busy. And I remember I didn't have enough money to put signage on the building. So I got myself a white texter to write on the window, Australia's first salt therapy or salt cave. And where we were right on a traffic lights. And I had people sitting there, and I could see them staring at the window trying to read the writing. And I went outside and I stood in the middle of the road for a few minutes, and people were bipping. I'm kind of, yeah, that's not working. They can't actually see the writing. So I went and I bought a couple of black bin liners and stuck it up behind the writing, and that was how I got my first signage onto the building. Yeah.
And your first customer?
Well, yeah, I got my first customer was a gentleman by the name of Bob, and Bob was one of the reasons as to why, Bob Sheldrick was one of the reasons as to why Salts of the Earth took off, because he had an amazing story to tell us, and we got that out onto a current affair for all the right reasons. Yeah. 3 months after opening, and boom, Salts of the Earth took off.
So what was Bob's story? What?
Bob had been suffering from the time of sinusitis. And he came in and he was, listen, I see you have sinusitis written on the front of the building. I'm willing to give anything a try here. I've lost my sense of smell for 24 years. Haven't been able to smell my wife's cooking, anything like that. And I'll give this a crack. And fair play to Bob. I think the hardest part was keeping him committed to a plan during the week. But fair play to him, he was committed, because he didn't... how can I say, this is kind of like a last resort for him. He was just like, I've tried everything. After about, I think it was about after 20 or 30 sessions, he surprisingly one Sunday said to the wife, geez, dinner smells lovely. And all of a sudden, pin dropped. Holy, my sense of smell is back. So Bob came in and decided to tell us, like he had to rush down and tell us, because we worked on Sundays. And bang, we were like, okay, well, here's our first testimonial. Here's our first, proof, anecdotal proof that it works. So we wrote, my wife, I said, we need to get this out. And my girlfriend, or my wife now, Kath, while I fell asleep at night, and she wrote an email to a current affair. And this is actually quite a good, funny story about Paddy again. She wrote a message to a current affair talking about the testimonial from Bob. And the following morning, I'd fallen asleep, but the following morning, my telephone rang. And it rang at 6:30. And it was a lady, I can't remember her name, but she said, "How you doing, David? It's such and such a person here from a current affair, and we got your note, and we'd love to get the cameras over." And I said, "Fucking Paddy, I can guarantee he's put someone up to this." And I handed the phone, and I could hear Kat going. Kat goes, "David, who is it?" And I said, "Oh, someone fucking wanted me up saying they're from a current affair." And I threw the phone. And she's like, "Oh, no, we'll have the place open, ready to go for you and all of this." And it really was a current affair talking to me at the time. So, yeah, current affair came in that following morning. We gave Bob a call, and there was another lady called Cheryl who had just started getting results as well. And they came in, and we went to air that evening. Now, at the time, I didn't have much experience as to what had the reach of what current affair. At the time, I didn't even have a computer. I just worked on index cards with people's names on their surnames in alphabetical order. And I wasn't even at home when it aired that night. I was working in the salt room, and I could tell exactly when it had aired because the telephone just went absolutely gangbusters, and just instantly overnight that just changed. All of a sudden people were, I need relief, how can I help with this, can I help with this? And we were booked out the next day, we're booked out for the next week, we're booked out for the next month. There was people flying in from all around Australia. There was people coming over from New Zealand. There was a gentleman who was coming up from Warrnambool on the train. He was an 85-year-old man coming up from Warrnambool 3 times a week to see us. And I suppose this is how I started getting into being exposed to franchising, because people were like, why isn't this in our area? We need to open up one of these in our area. And then people start talking about franchising. The F word, John, and I didn't know what franchising was.
Well, just at this point, so have you only still got the 2 devices?
2 machines, yeah, and then I very quickly realised, hang on a second, I'm in a bit of bother here if I really want to maximise this exposure and get as much. But what I done was I set up a private room because there was people with skin conditions that needed to actually, get undressed and allow the salt at their skin. So we built a private room, so where they actually had that, they had that privacy to do so. And then you take a look at how a salt therapy business runs. You should run it based on your square meterage, how your number of seats and the area you have between, and then your utilization capacities and all of that start kicking in. You start understanding your busy time of days, and then incentivizing people to come for your quieter days, and all that sort of tricks of the trade. Yeah,
that was what all happened for you on steroids, because I'd imagine the first 3 months were you working somewhere else at the time, or
no? I was self-funded. I put everything in.
Yeah,
everything, absolutely. I remember one couple came in and they bought I think it was a 30-session pack, and we had them priced at $500 each. And I started crying when they paid me. That was $1,000 that I had just basically taken, and I was burning cash like no tomorrow. Like, I'm eating noodles and drinking water at this stage. I'm about to move on to celery. And I just started crying, and they were like, "Why are you crying?" I said, "You've saved my business." And that's like, so I was stretched to the nines.
So managing cash in any business up at the first 3 months when you don't have your other job. So that's then the next challenge is obviously too much demand and trying to get machines and all of that.
Yeah, well, I'm a firm believer. If you're going to go into something, I don't think you do it half-hearted, because if you do it half-hearted, you've got nothing to lose. If you've got something to lose, your back is against the wall, you've got no other choice but to make it work. And you figure out very fucking quickly how to make it work, because you have to. And I've never been one to do it anything half-heartedly. I think you've got to go in. You've got to go in with full intent to be successful and listen to your customers and adapt and get through it. Try and leave arrogance and ego at the door, and basically listen. And it's hard. It's tough. Not many people are built like that, because that is the reason as to why businesses fail. They don't understand the level of tenacity and persistence that needs to go in. Like, nowadays we hear such things as side hustles and all of that. It's all bullshit. If you're going to do something, do it full on. Go for it.
So you're on a current affair.
Yep.
You've got 2 machines.
Yep.
$1,000 just come in.
Yeah.
So you probably went and had Macca's that night or something.
Treat.
Yeah.
Cheap
Pint of Guinness.
With a Sunday.
Yeah. They get crazy. So you've got to get more machines. You do the private room.
Yep.
And then you start thinking, okay, I've got to get into franchising or roll this out.
Yep.
Is that where you went?
I started thinking, there's an opportunity here for me to grow this. There's an opportunity for me to actually get bigger. And I didn't know how to get bigger because I didn't know what franchising was. Back then I thought, shit, I'm going to have to go through all of this again, give up my savings and everything that we've just built, and then go into, you know, the risk of opening up another location. And but people just started talking about franchising to me. Have you thought about franchising this business? And I was like, I don't know what franchising is. Not a clue. I'm from a very small village in country Ireland. No such thing as franchising where I'm from. Not at all. So that word started popping up, and we looked into it. I went to see a company here in Melbourne, and they quoted me something like 150 grand, and I looked at them and I said, You're not with reality, my friend. And I said,
Very short meeting.
Yeah, I think I won't waste any more of your time. So 150 grand to set up a franchise business, I kind of, it's not how it happens.
Were you getting any, so you've obviously seen the idea in Ireland, your dad's, you know, benefited from it. Were you getting any other tips on sort of, you know, pricing or any of the other business things from Ireland, or was it really just you had to learn it all and build it all yourself?
I looked around because you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
You have to start somewhere, and you have to test the market, and you have to get your product market fit right. And we had different pricing structures. We started where it was, you know, buy one, get one free, or first session free, just to get people in and experience it. And then you had the ability to buy a 5-pack or a 10-pack, 15-pack, 20-pack. And then we very quickly realized that people of our target market actually didn't have that sort of cash one-off. And then we realized, well, hang on a second, we're not curing their condition, so therefore the lifetime value of this client is worth more, so then continuously having to sell. Yeah. So why don't we just focus on building out a subscription or a membership model? But that evolved over numbers of years. It wasn't just instantly, you know, oh, one day I wake up and we do this. It was all test, talk to the customer, talk to the client. How can we make you advocates of our business, and how can we get you actually utilizing the product, and so that it's not impacting your life on your budget as well. So we can run a feasible business whilst it's affordable for you to come on a continuous basis.
How quickly did someone, like Bob you mentioned, but how quickly did people see the benefits of the treatments?
It was quite amazing. Some majority of people reported to us that they slept better after the first session, and the reason being was because of the negative ion effect on the body and the airways getting open a bit more. They're bringing in more oxygen, and they ended up sleeping. But it's like anything, you progressively get worse, where now all of a sudden, my goodness, I had an elderly woman bring in a handkerchief full of mucus one day to show me what she coughed up that morning, and she was quite proud to show me. And she said it was so salty, it was like coughing up capicola, a chunk of capicola. Yeah. The amount of salt in it.
Wow.
And so people, you have to, and this is where we had to try and train our staff and ourselves to become consultants, people, you know, expertise, that people need to be coached through. Because if they don't know what they need to do and you put them on their own plan, they're not going to get results. It's like going to the gym. I want to work out, but I'm not going to listen to anybody. But why isn't this working for me? Yep. You know, so we had to take that sort of stance and get that right. So people, it varied. People, it depended on many different factors in their life as well. Stress. People don't understand the amount of stress, what it does to the body and everything like that, and how it suppresses the immune system and the knock-on effect of that. So we built an experience for people where it was nice and relaxing. There was massage chairs, and there was relaxation music playing. There was, you know, eye covers and everything like that, so that they can completely wind down. So, yeah, people would see results as quick as 24 hours, or it could be up to 2 or 3 months, depending on their circumstances.
So, second store.
What
did that? You went to someone that charged 150,000.
Yeah, and
was the second store a company? Was it yours or a franchise?
No, it was a company, and all of the research that I'd done. So, like everything, before I jump in, I want to take a look at, okay, what do I have to do? I want to do this, and I want to do it to the best of my ability. And all of the research that I had done and all the feedback that I had gotten and reading on Google was to prove out your franchise system, go and open up a second location and see if you can replicate the success. But I wanted to go one step further because I wanted to try a different demographic of people. Because I believed that we had a therapy that helped regardless of what sort of class you were. We wanted to build a business model that was going to work for all classes and be able to bring this therapy to everybody around Australia. So we decided, okay, we're going to set up in Brighton, and that was an experience. It was quite interesting because at the time self-funded the second build, so we start building through that, and in the meantime we ended up having a flood in our first one, and naturally insurance company doesn't cover if there's a hole in the roof. All of a sudden I've got a store underwater. And this store is the one that's actually financing the build of the second one. Yep. So you could imagine the heart palpitations going on that week. So naturally we shut down the business. We had to strip everything out of that one. We brought all the trades over from Brighton. We stripped it all out, got it all dried up, fixed the patch of the hole in the roof and everything like that. It wasn't worth the argument with the landlord. It wasn't worth the argument with the insurance company because I had a lot of risk happening over here setting it up the next one, that if I had to spend 2 months arguing back and forth, I would have been bust. So we just went, forget about it. Let's just rock on, crack on. So we obviously the target changed. Get Essendon back up and running so that we've got the money coming through and get the customers back in, and then we'll crack on with Brighton. So
Brighton would have been more expensive, I'm guessing, the rent.
Yeah.
On your side, or?
Well, we didn't go to we did because we were a destination brand. We didn't have to go onto the main streets, the main retail strips. We had to be close by because we needed convenience around. We need to be able to park. So we were always either at the end of the strip or an adjacent street close by that they could park and walk around. So we set up in Martin Street in Brighton, and we got cracking there. Now, the reason I wanted to challenge that was obviously to see if we could break into that demographic of people, and that was a hard market to crack because obviously I'm not from the area, and people in that area are they keep it very close knit. But when you do crack into it, it's a good market, and the people are fantastic over there. So we managed. That was the next evolution of Salts of the Earth. We got the second one up and running, and then from that we started building out how do we do our site plans, so our fit out guidelines and everything. So whilst we were building, we were actually building our manuals for fit out guidelines and getting that all ready to go, so that when we went with the intention of franchising, we had stuff already in play.
So had you progressed from a garbage bag and a pen signage wise?
We did.
You did? Well done.
We had.
Second store? Good boy.
Second store. But we'd gone down quite an alternative market where our colour scheme was very natural colours, so a green and a brown, very earthy. And we very quickly realised that, okay, in order for us to grow this even bigger again, we need to get away from the alternative look and get into the more of the complementary side of things, where people who do have such things as emphysema or anything like that their doctors aren't going to go, these guys are cuckoo over here. So we changed our logo. The name didn't change, it was still Salts of the Earth, but we made the decision that we were going to go with more of a complementary look, introduce white, more clinical, and a change of our logo as opposed to a salt bowl and a banana leaf underneath it. We ended up going with a shadow of a salt crystal and Salts of the Earth written underneath it, written through it, and that instantly changed our business overnight. People felt confident coming to us.
So you decided to go down the franchising path.
Yep.
You've recruited, gone through, got some documents, recruited a franchisee. How did that process go for you?
Building the franchise system was quite. It was because you don't know what you don't know, and it was like, okay, well, I'm going to do this, and the first person's going to come along. We're going to buy the business, and they're just documents. Like, well, what's the royalties you're going to charge? I don't know. Stick the finger up in the air and see what it is. So none of what I now know, the financial modelling or anything was put in place. So it was just really, okay, well, you're just developing an operations manual, franchise agreement and a disclosure document, and we'll evolve it from there. At the time we did, there was a couple of people who had put their name down, if you ever want to expand, would like the opportunity to join the network and take it from there. There was no real recruitment process put in place. All it was, we'd like to join your business. And okay, that's it. So circled back to them, and they read through it. We looked at they looked at the investment level, and that's how the first one came about.
So then you had a strategy of some company owned and some franchise as you grew? Was it really just went boots and all in the franchising path?
It was boots and all into the franchise, like everything again that I do, boots and all into the franchise. And I think if you make the decision to be a franchisor, I think there's a responsibility on you to actually lead and guide, but also support and develop franchisees. If I had corporate stores, that would have distracted me from that. And
did you keep Mooney Ponds?
Yeah, I kept Mooney Ponds and kept Brighton.
Yeah.
And then we used the cash flow of that to fundamentally fund the franchisor. Whilst most franchise systems get it incredibly wrong when they're setting up. They don't know what the support structure is going to be. They don't know what the royalties they need to charge their franchisees in order to provide a level of support that's going to help them grow. And they can't model that into future growth plans. And you very quickly realize that being a franchisor is a step back from being a business owner, because you're no longer taking 100% of the revenue, you're taking a very small percentage of it, but trying to deliver as much value as possible within that budget.
So you got some amazing PR with the Current Affair very early in the business. Later on in the business, you were successful in winning awards. So how did you decide to go down that path of getting some industry recognition, and then obviously what were the results of winning those awards?
Yeah, it all started. I joined the Franchise Council of Australia. I became a member there because the only way that I was going to learn is learn from my peers and sit and be able to rub shoulders with the likes of David Christie from Baker's Delight, Tanya 7-Eleven, Sarah from La Porchetta. These are people who I would never have had access to prior to that. And it was quite amazing that whilst going through and going to those events and meetings, I found that, oh, hang on a second, these guys have the exact same growing pains as I do as an emerging business, but they're on a larger scale and they know how to deal with them because they've gone through a couple of cycles of these problems. So one thing that is my love of franchising is actually helping people. So from taking the salt therapy side of things and helping people live a healthier, better life, I then adopted those values into, I want my franchisees to actually have a better future. Join the business, have a purpose, build something with me. Did I get it right? Not all of the time. And that comes back down to recruiting, because sometimes you have to make sure people are aligned to the culture and values, but I didn't have any testing mechanisms back then. Same with every franchise system out there. But I started to really, really focus on the performance of the franchisees. And it was detrimental in some instances, but it was quite rewarding in others. And what I mean by that was, one year we actually had 3 franchisees, and people ask me, what's the most proudest moment that I had with Salts of the Earth? It wasn't winning the national award for NextGen in franchising, which everybody thinks, and then becoming runner-up globally that year in Las Vegas. It was actually seeing 3 of my franchisees going head-to-head after winning state awards. That's when you know you've done something good, because that's what I set out to do, which was help these business become business owners and actually build something, a better future for them and their family. So it was that was probably the most humbling experience, and that's when I went, yeah, now I've achieved what I set out to do.
Fantastic.
And so in Vegas, tell us, we will go back to you. I know you're very humble about this, but in Vegas, you're up against the best in the world of emerging franchisors.
Yeah.
How was that experience?
that was incredible. Like that, you talk about being exposed to some of the some of the people here in Australia, some of the massive franchisors here in Australia. But you go to America, it's a whole different ball game. You're going to the land of where people celebrate entrepreneurship. They don't cut down success, and they actually want to push and drive you to be better and better and better, and they celebrate you. So when we arrived there as NextGen, we were celebrated. We were paraded around. These are the next people that are coming up through the franchising ranks. And so all of the larger brands, established brands, actually put time aside to get to know you and get to understand your business and help give you guidance and everything like that. And it was a phenomenal experience, absolutely phenomenal experience. My wife came with me. She was 37. She was, what? She was 7 months pregnant at the time, and there was no way she was going to miss it, because obviously she'd been on this journey with me. And
she wrote the email to Current Affair.
She wrote the email to a Current Affair. I wouldn't have been here without her. But my parents came over. My parents' sister and brother-in-law and all of that came over from Ireland, and I'm just a little bit annoyed that I found out alcohol is free when you're gambling on the tables at the end of the trip.
But then things didn't go to plan,
Yep.
a little bit longer. So there was a few things, in a lot of businesses, cracks start to form. So all your franchisees, you've got, issues with potentially not going as well as what they thought they would go. You've
Yep.
got product issues as well. So, supply chain, getting the products into Australia.
Yep.
So how did you deal with these things when they weren't going so well?
Yeah, so I look back to a younger me going through this, and being a person who, as I've said throughout this whole podcast, is I throw everything in it. And one thing that I probably didn't take into account is that most people aren't built like that. So when we decided to change or do something or whatever, I didn't have massive change management skills. It was like, okay, we want to prove out something. I'm going to do it really quickly, and then I expect everybody to follow suit. I very quickly realized that that's not what franchising is all about. And there was people who just, even though we had changed business models and proved out that we'd increased revenue by 22%, it wasn't so much that, it was the fact that I hadn't consulted with them, the fact that I hadn't brought them in on the change management, the fact that I'm now telling them what to do as opposed to helping them what to do. And that was quite an eye opener, and that got a few of the franchisees offside, and obviously there's a few of them that feel that way, so they group together and they start doing their own thing, and that was pretty hard to take when you think your values, and they probably wouldn't agree with this statement, but my values, I've always maintained them, is to help people try and better themselves as much as you can, even though they didn't see it at the time.
And the products, so that was obviously another issue that started to develop with the products, getting them out of Eastern Europe. Yeah,
so that's a much bigger story, and we'd probably need a whole nother episode to go through all of that. But it's making sure you've got your products, get your suppliers on side, because franchising's not just all stakeholders in franchising have to be managed, and everybody has to be. It's profitable. Everything has to be profitable the whole way through, and make sure that everything is right and by the book. And it's all of your planning. We were on excessive growth targets when I left Salts. We had there was 10 people signed up ready to open up locations, and all of that had to be managed coming in. People don't realize when you get to that first pain barrier of critical mass and it starts taking off, you've got to be ready for that. And not many people get ready for that. They don't realize, because it's such a slog to get to that stage, that when you do get to that stage, all of a sudden the attention changes very quickly. And so make sure all of the suppliers and everything are well aware of what's about to happen.
About how many stores have they got now?
I think they're down to around 8.
Right.
Yeah.
So you exit.
Yep.
And if you were you're always going to have difficult barriers to get over.
Yep.
And in many cases, that barrier is you.
Yeah, 100%.
Not you, David Lindsay, but
no,
you,
it's the founder.
franchisor.
Yeah.
So how do you get to the bottom of that? You know, for franchisors that are starting out like what you did, how do you, if they're not self-aware, how do you help them to get through that transition from being the X factor in a business, let's say,
Yep.
to scale?
Yeah. So the hardest challenge is you go from being the butcher, baker and candlestick maker to all of a sudden now you finally have a profitable business based on royalties, based on, you know, reoccurring revenue coming from royalties. You start employing staff. Now, step number one, I've employed some shit staff. And people will say things into you in interviews and they'll have all this experience, and then all of a sudden you hear the shit that's going on out in the market. They're not carrying the values that we had been building into the franchisees. So that's learning number one, is making sure that staff align to those values. But I seen that I was in the way of my business growth, and I recognized it very early that my business skills or business acumen, what Salts the Earth was about to overtake me.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a business coach, and I got a business coach to help me with Salts the Earth, and I had another business coach that was helping me with myself, grow myself. Because if you don't stay ahead of the game, if you're not thinking long-term 6, 12, 24, 36 months in advance, and you're just day-to-day, that's the way you'll stay. You've got to empower. You've got to bring the right team in under you, empower them, delegate to them, while you then, as a founder, you've got that vision that everybody's bought into. You've got to get the skill set of the people to carry out the day-to-day operation to free you up to go and get that vision.
Yeah. It's one of the biggest hurdles, isn't it? And understanding,
Huge.
You know, what you're actually good at and what you need to keep doing.
100%.
What your gaps are to fill around you.
100%. It's like, and I found the busier that I got, the less time that I had. So when people were kind of slow to adjust or change, I was like, fuck, what else do you want me to do for you? I'm trying to help you here, but I'm trying to work on this here. If I don't work on this here, and I suppose, like, you put yourself in their shoes, they're just reaching out for support. But I sometimes say they need to put themselves in the shoes of the founder as well, because there's a vision there that has to be. So when it comes to franchising, it's about people. It's about clear communication. It's about make sure everybody's aligned to the vision. To franchisors out there, I'd suggest get out of your fucking way. Listen, bring the people in who have the experience, who have done it. And don't tell them how to do it. Share your vision with them and make sure you meet with them quite regularly to make sure you're achieving those goals and targets, but stay the fuck out of your way, because the business will grow quicker than any person can grow.
Yep.
So then you've got involved looking at how to help franchisors with the recruitment process and starting a recruitment business. So
Yeah, well, as you know, Bruce, you've helped me through quite a lot. You were my solicitor on the tail end of Salts the Earth. So, but one thing that you take a look at the success of any franchise system out there, and there's 9 times out of 10, it's the people that are involved in the business. The brand is the brand, yes, but if you don't get the people right, it's a disaster.
Exactly.
And you've got different people you require at different stages of growth within your business. So when you're starting out as a franchise system, and you need quite entrepreneurial people, because your system isn't quite developed yet. So you need them to actually go out and think outside the box. But as you start developing out your system and getting your operations manual, your way of doing things, etc., you're looking for a different type of person. You're looking for a person who's going to follow the rules. So therefore, the entrepreneurial person who you've just worked with no longer likes to work within that environment, and that's why you end up with people exiting. And then as you start coming to maturity, you start getting into more of a battery hen. Okay, well, this is it. This is what you do. This is what we do. Okay, and we'll do all of this. We're just utilizing your capital to grow and get scale out there. But seeing a gap in the market, and that's where I sat down with you, gents, and we, in the middle of COVID, and we said there's a massive market out there. There's the amount of emerging franchisors that are in Australia that just do not know how to get the fuck out of their way, because the reason they're not growing, and let me say it, the reason you're not growing is because you're in your own way. We sat down, we developed a business model. How do we get all of these experienced people who've been there and done it, as an emerging brand, you can't go out and you can't afford a development manager who could be on 180 grand a year. But if we develop out a business model where it's a plug-in resource and spread that cost across numerous brands per resource, it's going to work. So, but we, our area of focus in BDC franchise recruitment is making sure that the franchisees out there that are starting out don't get it wrong. Because you can go one of two ways. You can, if you don't have the capital to hold you over, if it's the wrong way, you're gonna crash. But if you do have the capital to hold you over, you're gonna have massive scars, and then you're gonna have a bit of brand damage that you'll then have to fix, and then you very quickly realize it's not just about getting stores open. It's first of all, it's get the right people, then get the stores open.
Exactly.
So one of the things that you did is looking at the recruitment business, and thinking about a technology business that could lead to that was the profiling and getting a bit of science behind the matching process. So tell us about this, the science behind franchise recruitment.
Well, it's funny because when I made my first mistakes in recruitment, I was like, okay, in marketing you've got demographic, you can build out demographic audiences. Okay, so that's quite easily done, male, female, age, etc., etc. But nobody's going to tell you how they're going to perform. You can take all the profiling you want in the world, but it's not going to tell you how it's going to perform, because each business is different. They've got different values, they've got different culture, they've got different roles and responsibilities between franchisor and franchisee. I've always been fascinated. How do you build out a psychological lookalike audience? Like, why is that franchisee better than that franchisee? And they went through the same process and both of them got through it, but why is this one doing 20% more than this one? So when we started the recruitment company, we looked at how do we build a psychological lookalike audience, and we found a profiling tool out of the US called Zoracle, which basically we go and profile the franchisees. It uses 7 different psychometric tests along culture, values, work style, social and emotional intelligence, and skill sets, competencies. And what we do is we profile the franchisees and we break them up into top Group A, Group B, and Group C, top, mid, and low. And from there, we build out benchmarks where they score. So when a person comes along to actually, apply for a brand or apply for a franchise, they take a profile and it spits out a compatibility result and exactly where their strengths and weaknesses. So there's areas such as compatibility, which is your culture, values, work style, and stage of growth. That can't change. That's who you are. That's naturally you. So if you're not aligned with that, not the opportunity. But then you've got the trainable stuff such as competency, social and emotional intelligence. So not only are you recruiting people, you're actually giving the support team of the franchisor a dedicated, a customized training schedule for that person. This person doesn't need any more sales training. They need marketing training, because they're exceeding our sales targets, so they need more marketing. So that's how we got into the psychological side of things, and so far it's been an incredible tool. And even for the lenders themselves, they now have a benchmark that they can go against. So it's not just a matter of, okay, this fella filled in an application form and signed an NDA and got his accountant to build a business plan and a cash flow. We actually have compatibility and a benchmark against the top performing franchisees within that network, which should give them the comfort to lend.
And you've developed a tech platform, so you've gone from helping people in, with their sort of respiratory issues to a technology entrepreneur. How's that going for you?
Well, again, I go back to my values and my principles is helping people. People work hard to get to where they are in life, and when they buy a franchise, 9 times out of 10, they're securing the purchase against a property. What kills me and what happens quite regularly is that franchisees are quite often treated as a salesperson, recruitment person's KPI. And it's just a matter of we've got to grow. We've got to grow. And those people don't realize how much those people have to lose. And it's no fault of their own. They love the brand, they love the product, they love the coffee or whatever it is, but they may not be right for the brand. So fundamentally, when I started in franchising, the first topic of discussion in an FCA event was how to get better leads, how to get better franchisees, how to get lenders on your side. And then before we started out with BDC, I went back to an FCA meeting, the first one in probably about 2 years, and they're still talking about the same topics. And I said, fuck this, I've got to fix this problem, because this problem's going to be around forever, this chicken and egg bullshit. And people are putting a whole lot of stuff on the line, and they don't deserve to be treated as a salesperson's KPI. So what we've done is we've adopted the profiling technology into a single profile, where people can go on to Hatch, take a 10-minute survey, and Hatch will actually match them up against the top performing franchisees of each franchise system that's within the Hatch platform itself.
Sounds exciting. And I'm going to loop back. Tips as a franchisor, what sort of tips would you give to emerging franchisors as they're on the journey through franchising?
Number one, first of all, what's your unit economics? Are they right? Is there enough gravy there to get a royalty out of, but also make a return on the initial investment? If your franchise agreement is 5 years and they're not returning after 2.5 years, 3 years, there's something dramatically wrong with your business. So get your unit economics right, get your business plan right. Understand your customers, understand who your customer for your franchisee is, and make sure you're setting up your units in the right locations. Don't just take a stab at the dark because of fucking inquiries come from Wollongong, but yet nobody meets the criteria of your customers in Wollongong. Don't do that. Make sure you get the right people on board, and that goes for franchisees, but it also goes for the support system. Have a very clear set of values of who you are and what you want to flow through your business from the get-go, because that's what keeps people going within your business. And I think be prepared to get out of your own fucking way. That's when I see in the growth. It's a very bitter pill to swallow, to be told that, hang on a second, we need you just focused on the vision. Get out of the way, because you've been doing it for so long yourself. It's hard, and you go through a lot of mental issues within yourself, going, oh, now I feel as if I'm no longer wanted here. It's quite the opposite. You need somebody with a fresh head thinking of the vision of the business while you've got the right people executing on the plan, and make sure that plan is watertight.
I have to say, one of my takeaways from today has been I should never get involved in a business where a customer brings in a hanky full of mucus.
Well,
liquid gold, John, liquid gold.
On that note, John, thank you for that. But thank you for being a guest on our Tell Us Your Effing Story. Thanks for your insights today.
My pleasure for sharing my franchising story.
Thank you.
Thanks guys.
Good
Bye-bye.
mate.